الحمد لله الذي خلق السماوات والأرض. الحمد لله الذي خلق السماوات والأرض وجعل الظلمات والنور ثم الذين كفروا بربهم يعدلون. هو الذي خلقكم من طين ثم قضى أجلا وأجل مسمى عنده سركم وجهركم ويعلم ما تكسبون. وما تأتيهم من آية من آيات ربهم إلا كانوا عنها معرضين. فقد كذبوا بالحق لما جاءهم فسوف يأتيهم أنباء ما كانوا به يستهزئون. أولم يروا كم أهلكنا من قبلهم من قرن مكناهم في الأرض ما لم نمكن لكم وأرسلنا السماء عليهم مدرارا وجعلنا الأنهار تجري من تحتهم فأهلكناهم بذنوبهم وأنشأنا من بعدهم قرنا آخرين. ولو نزلنا عليك كتابا في قرطاس فلمسوه بأيديهم لقال الذين كفروا إن هذا إلا سحر مبين. وقالوا لولا أنزل عليه ملك ولو أنزلنا ملكا لقضي الأمر ثم لا ينظرون. آمنا بالله صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوات.
صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Again, for the well-being of the community, another salat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And for the hastened reappearance of Imam Izman, another louder salat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. صل على محمد وعلى محمد. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبه نستعين. الحمد لله الذي جعل الحمد مفتاحا لذكره وسببا للمزيد من فضله ودليلا على آلائه وعظمته. ثم الصلاة والسلام على خير خلقه سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين، لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين، أرواحنا له فداء. أما بعد، فقد قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ومن الناس من يقول آمنا بالله وباليوم الآخر وما هم بمؤمنين يخادعون الله والذين آمنوا وما يخدعون إلا أنفسهم وهم لا يشعرون. صدق الله العلي العظيم. وما يشعرون. صدق الله العلي العظيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Mu'minat. First and foremost, I give my condolences to you on the occasion which we are commemorating the shahadat of Imam Hussein, his Ahlul Bayt, and his companions. Alayhim afdal salatu wassalam. As we have mentioned, our discussion is on social ethics, al-akhlaq ijtima'i, and particularly those ethical guidelines that we derive from Surah Baqarah, the first chapter of the Quran that was revealed to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam when he made the hijrah to Medina, because the mission at that point was to establish a community, and within that community there were different individuals in faith, in belief, in ethnicity. And so how does one establish a society or an ideal society with such variations within the society? How do you create an interaction between these individuals? And briefly stated that there are three moral philosophies which we are kind of focusing on as well. A relativist moral philosophy, the subjectivist moral philosophy, and the religious moral philosophy. The subjectivist is, again, a moral philosophy that's based on one's feeling, that today I feel this way, so therefore this becomes the guiding principles of how they interact with others. Those who are relativists, their moral philosophy, it centers around their opinion or the opinion of a group. And of course, it fluctuates, just as also the subjectivist philosophy, moral philosophy will fluctuate as well. But in either case, they don't have what we would consider, or what someone who follows a religious moral philosophy, as that to understand that there's a purpose in life. And that purpose has been given to us by our Creator, by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the one who has created mankind, the one who has created this universe. And so therefore he created it with a purpose, and therefore he has given guidelines for his creation to live by, not only as an individual, but as a society, as a community, of how to interact with one another. And when you will see that creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, some will abide by it. Those who accept the revelation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, accept the prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, accept the awliya of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and those who don't. And those who don't are among the kuffar and munafiqeen, as we've discussed so far, the kuffar, and we were able to kind of wrap that up into 2 lectures. As far as the munafiqeen, and as we mentioned that in Surah Baqarah itself, that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He begins that surah, that about the first 5 surahs are about the believers, and then the 6th and 7th surah is about the, verse is about the kafir, and then from verse 8 until about verse 20 is about the kuffar, about the munafiqeen. So, but from verse 17 to 20, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives some examples, a parable. But nonetheless, I was hoping that maybe we will wrap it up into lectures, but I don't think that that will possibly be the case. We'll take 3 lectures on this, and today we'll continue and examining that moral basis of the munafiq, because this is something that is very important to understand, this quality of nifaq, and just stay away from it. And because this is the most dangerous element or moral philosophy in a community or in a society. It will destroy the society. And this is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He talks about that final destination, and we'll mention it, of the munafiq, He says that they are in asfal al-jahim, the asfal, they are in the lowest part of Jahannam. Why? Because of their ability to destroy and to rip a community apart. We mentioned yesterday that one of their goals and objective is to do what? To do tafriqa, to divide people. And that was the example that we saw in the Masjid al-Dharar, that by the order of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it was to be destroyed. The Prophet, they destroyed that masjid. Again, because it was not a true masjid, a true place to come together and to actually worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It was a place to divide the community. It was a place to destroy the community. And this is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says about the opposite of that masjid al-dharar, that the masjid al-taqwa, says this is the true masjid. That masjid in which it advocates and it restores, or even it brings about this consciousness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the awareness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, at-taqwa. And so it behooves us to understand these qualities, because as we mentioned yesterday at the end of our lecture, that Amir al-Mu'mineen and also Imam Baqarah alayhi ma'afal salatu wa salam, they mentioned certain qualities, certain ethics, certain things that, God forbid, if we fall into those things, then it will instill in us, or it may, God forbid, lead us to this quality of nifaq. One of those things is lying. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So one who gets into this habit of lying and continue to lie, what it does, it hardens that person's heart. And so they're day in and day out, what they speak or what they think becomes what? Becomes a lie, becomes falsehood. And that is, again, the seed of nifaq. Likewise, one who engages in falsehood, or as Imam Baqarah alayhi wasallam, he stated when we mentioned the last, that so in kathratul khusuma, to be constantly engaged in fighting and being antagonistic towards things. So that also, it hardens the heart and makes the seed of nifaq. One more thing that I didn't get a chance to say yesterday because of the shortness of time, but it's one final hadith also, so we understand that what are those elements of nifaq. Because sometimes, as we mentioned, just like kufr or disbelief or rejecting or denying, yes, a person can be a believer, can be someone who says La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, but their actions are like the actions of those who reject certain aspects of Allah. Either kufran ni'mah, they reject the blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or they indulge in this type of kufr where it is that they reject the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Kufrul amr, or kufrul amal bi amrillah. So they reject and they refuse to act by what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded him to do. So likewise, nifaq is in the same way, that if we get into this habit of lying, that it leads to nifaq. And if it becomes easy for us, and yes, unfortunately, our heart may become hard. But this is very interesting what Imam Ali, he states. He says, kathratul wifaq nifaq. Allah. Kathratul wifaq nifaq. What is that? He says that a person who is just always agreeing to things. Oh, yes. You want me to do this? Oh, yes, I'll do this. I'll do this. I'll do that. I'll do that. In other words, they are taking on more than they can actually do. And they're just basically perhaps doing it just for show so that they can gain the favor of people, that people, oh, hey, this person is popular because he's going to do this, he's going to do that. But in reality, that person doesn't have the ability to do all of those things. But he's just giving, in other words, lip service, as we say in English. Lip service. Oh, yeah, I'll do it. Oh, I'll take care of this. So that means that when we operate, when we interact with one another, we have to be very practical and pragmatic at times. Someone is asking me, and it's not being mean if someone says, hey, can you do this? Yeah, if I don't have the ability to do it, say no. Well, I don't have the ability to do it. I don't have the skill set to do this, what you're asking me. Someone else has that skill set. Or someone else is able to do it. Or someone else, or, hey, I may not have time to do it. And this is one of the things that also Imam Musa Kadhim alayhi salatu wasalam, he shows us in his actions. One of his companions said that there was an individual that he was walking alongside with some of the companions of Imam Musa Kadhim, and everyone left, and then the servant of Imam Musa Kadhim, he was there to the end. And this one individual, he was walking with him, wasn't saying anything, and then when he goes, he kind of goes ahead, and he stands at the door. Imam Musa Kadhim. And so as Imam Musa Kadhim alayhi wasallam, he comes to the door, he sees him, and again, the person doesn't ask anything. Imam Musa Kadhim gives him salams. Person gives their salams back. Person says nothing. Imam Musa Kadhim, he proceeds into his house. And the servant asks him, he says that, Yabna Rasulullah, says it appears that he wanted to come in. And so Imam Musa Kadhim says that perhaps. Well, on one hand, he didn't ask to come in, so he didn't express any particular request. He says, and also at this particular moment in time, it is not a moment in time that I am able to have a guest to come in. He says, and if I had asked him to come in, he says, this will be, I would be saying something that is not a reality. That is not sincere. He says, and that is kind of the seed of nifaq. In fact, one individual, perhaps a scholar, he says that if you want to see that, what was the issue with the people of Kufa, that, why, again, they turned their backs on Imam Hussein. Again, this particular issue itself, that they wrote all of those letters, and perhaps somewhere encouraging others that, okay, yes, I'm really sincere, and I'm going to go out, and other people are looking at other people, oh, if this person, Fulan, they're going to go, then, hey, I have to go too, so I need to write a letter as well. So they were just simply writing the letter, because there were thousands upon thousands of letters that went to Imam Hussein alayhi salatu from Kufa, that we will stand with you, Ibn Rasulullah. And this is one of the things that also we have to be very careful of, one in ourselves, just to, and this doesn't mean that we shouldn't be agreeable to things, but we have to be practical. We have to be pragmatic. And we definitely have to give our services to our masjid, to our family, to our community. We definitely have to do that. We should never fall short of that. But when we examine the munafiq, which is the greatest threat to the society, and as we showed in the two examples that we mentioned yesterday, one in Abdullah ibn Ubay, and also in Abu Amir al-Rahib. Two examples that were evident during the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And of course, one of the things that we see in their interaction with, again, their small group or so, Abdullah ibn Ubay, who was supposed to be a leader or a king of his tribe, and he did not get it because he became Muslim, and then he plotted in order to destroy Rasulullah, destroy the Muslim community. Again, who did he speak to? He spoke to those individuals who had some wealth among his own community member, among his own tribe, to try to convince them to, listen, don't spend your wealth on the Prophet, boycott him, boycott the Muslims. And likewise, the tribe of Abu Amir al-Rahib, again, they also plotted, they made that masjid al-Dharar, and they were wanting him to come and to be the imam of that masjid. So here brings about a question, that how is it that they were able to influence others? Because that is the danger of the munafiq, that they're able to, again, come in, they are able to appear within a community, within a society, and claim that they believe. وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَن يَقُولُ آمَنَّا بِاللَّهِ وَبِالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ, that they believe, وَمَا هُمْ بِمُؤْمِنِينَ, but they're not. يُخَادِعُونَ اللَّهِ وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا, that they are trying to deceive them. So what is that point of deception? That point of deception we understand in Surah Al-Jumu'ah, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He talks about the munafiq, He describes them. And He says, وَإِذَا رَأَيْتُهُمْ تُعْجِبُكَ أَجْسَامُهُمْ وَإِنْ يَقُولُوا تَسْمَعْ لِقَوْلِهِمْ كَأَنَّهُمْ خُشُبٌ مُسَنَّدَةٌ. So the first thing and quality that we understand about those individuals, He says, they will have a very beautiful appearance. Like on the outside, they will look very good. So their appearance is deceptive. Their reality is dangerous. Their reality is ugly. Right? Because they want to create division. I remember, and this is in 2009, I was in Syria for a bit. And there was one guy, he, this is in the area of Zainabiyah. And whenever you saw this person, he was always he had a white thobe, very crisp. And it was, really like, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَإِذَا رَأَيْتُهُمْ تُعْجِبُكَ أَجْسَامُهُم. Very crispy ironed thobe. He had this green kind of scarf he would wear. His hair was perfect. Everything was perfect. He had kohl in his eyes. And when you saw this person, you were like, oh, wow, this guy looks like he should be in a movie. And he would sit around, and I remember the first time I saw him, I had to ask some of the people, I was like, who is this guy? Initially I thought maybe this guy is like a speaker, sheikh or something, someone who's staying in a house. And so the people in that area I was staying in, they were like, oh, this is a Sayyid such and such. They had very high praises of him. So I was like, okay. Oh, okay, subhanAllah. And of course he would be sitting around talking to people in their shops, quoting Quran, quoting hadith, poetry. Again, it was almost like he had expertise in all of these things. I was there for a couple months. So after about a month or so, then I didn't see this guy. I didn't see him. So one day I just simply asked him, oh, maybe this guy is, he's sick or something. Something happened to him. Maybe he moved. So I asked about him. And the same guy who gave him much praise, he was like, oh, that guy was a shaitan. He was a shaitan. I was like, oh, what happened? He said, at one point, again, he began, he goes from Sayyid, but he never produced what his shajara was, what his lineage was. He says, and then he started making these claims that he was, he had contact with Imam Zaman. Now he's a helper of Imam Zaman. Some people began to believe him. Then he began to cheat them and take their money and do all kinds of things within the community that, as some said, that they were actually looking for him. They said, and if we find him, we will kill him. But again, this, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, He says that those munafiqeen, when you see them, you become immediately kind of attracted or connected to him, like, wow, subhanAllah, who is this person? Seems to be almost flawless. But in this verse in itself, and also in Surah Baqarah, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, يُخَادِعُونَ اللَّهَ وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. This gives us one aspect of why the munafiq is dangerous within a community, but also it gives us, or it alludes to one of the aspects and one of the guidelines that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala He places within the community in order to give that community a good social guideline, so the moral ethics that we should have in society, and that is deception. To be deceptive in our transactions is one of the greatest sins. And when we look at in fiqh, it says ghish, to do ghish or to deceive someone, it's a great sin. And to show you that how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in His guidelines, He tries to root this out. Again, ghish is something that, subhanAllah, that if someone did a ghish and they got married, that marriage doesn't need a divorce because of that deception is right away invalid. Right away invalid. So, for example, one of those things that are mentioned in the books of Ahkam, and this is just simply an example. Let's say, for example, you had someone who had some sort of defect or some sort of thing. For example, that person was blind. Legally, they're blind. They can't see. But they pretend and they appear that they can see, and then, the guy is blind and he gets married to the woman, and the woman sees that, after a while she says, oh, wait a minute, this guy he can't see anything. All the places that we were before when we were talking, because that was a place where he lived or he was able to walk around like it was nothing, like he could see. But he was blind. And he didn't disclose this to me. So that marriage, although they recited that, is invalid. Likewise, and they also give this example, likewise, if there's a woman, she had some defect, she wasn't, able to give birth, or she had no hair, and everything she's wearing is a wig, and he said, you get married, and then the guy finds out, he's like, oh, wait a minute, this is what I wasn't expecting. No, this is ghish. And so that marriage, that act, it doesn't need a divorce. It's invalid because of deception. Likewise, if one goes into a business transaction, the deception will, again, destroy that transaction, meaning that transaction is invalid. That if someone hides a defect, someone's selling a car, and this is one of the things that used to happen before. And in fact, one person, just a couple of weeks ago, he bought some cars, and then he realized that this happened, and now he's like, oh, if I want to sell this car, do I have to disclose this or not? And so this is why I was like, oh, well, this is why we should probably now take care of looking for cars through Carfax. But what has this car gone through? So he didn't realize that the odometer was bent backwards to make it look like the car had less miles than it actually had. He bought the car. He was like, oh. And he bought it with the intention of, oh, I'm going to sell it if it needs a few repairs. So now he said, now when I sell it, do I have to mention this? Yes, you have to mention it. Otherwise, it's rich. You're deceiving someone. The engine has more miles than actually it appears. Otherwise, that if you sold it without disclosing that thing, then it is not correct. Just as, so one last example of this, that I can't remember, someone was telling me that they were buying a belt in Pakistan. So the person kind of lived here in America for some time. He says, oh, I go back to Pakistan, I have to, I look at things, and also I tell my wife that, if you see whatever you see in Pakistan, you want to buy this and that, He says that, you know what, we look at it, and because I'm not, I don't live in Pakistan. Yes, I grew up in Pakistan, but I've been out of Pakistan for so long. Even when I go back, people know that, oh, this guy, he doesn't live here. So then the prices become double. And this is not only in Pakistan. Most places in the Middle East you go, unfortunately. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to root that out. Why? Because, again, what it breeds is nifaq in the community, in a society. So he says that, so his wife, and often he does too, he says, I look at it, I want this. So then what I do is that, I ask the guy how much it is, then I go back, I say, I'll come back later. Then he sends his brother who lives in Pakistan, he goes back and he brings back the same thing for half the price. Allah. He said, I went to buy a belt because I needed a halal belt because he was, so he asked the guy in the shop, he was like, okay, I want a good belt. And so the guy brings out this belt and says, this is the best belt I have, and he gives this price. High price. And the guy looks at it, he says, SubhanAllah, this, at this price, I don't think I'm going to buy this belt. He's like, give me your cheaper belt. And the guy was like, no, you don't want the cheaper belt. You don't want the cheaper belt. You want to get this belt because this is the best belt. The guy says, no, I don't like this. And if I'm going to pay that amount, it should be of a different quality. So give me the cheaper belt. So then the shop owner finally gives him the cheaper belt, the so-called cheaper belt. When the brother looks at the belt, he was like, wow, I want this belt. How much is this belt? Because to him, he realizes that the quality of the cheaper belt is actually better than the more expensive belt. So now the guy in the shop, now he has to charge, or at least if he wants to stay on that deception, he has to charge the guy a little bit less than what he was charging him for the more expensive belt. So the guy pays him. So the expensive belt, for example, he says, 20 rupees. And for the cheaper belt, which was a better quality, he told him 10 rupees. So then he asks him, he says, look, tell me the truth. He says, because to me, this cheaper belt seems like it's better quality. Seems like you would sell this as the more expensive belt. He says, tell me the truth. Is this actually the cheaper belt? Or that one? He says, well, to be honest, the belt I'm selling you now for the cheaper belt, he says, this is actually the more expensive belt. He was like, so why were you giving me the raggedy cheaper belt at that higher price? He was like, because I want to get rid of those and, make some good money off of those. And then he tells me, he says, listen, he says, brother, look, don't deceive people. He says, you know what? I'm going to just pay you what this belt is worth and a little bit more. Stop deceiving people. Because that nifaq, that deception destroys community. Another aspect of the nifaq which destroys community is the sickness which is in the heart of the munafiq. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, فِي قُلُوبِهِمْ مَرَضٌ. They are sick. They are spiritually sick. And part of that spiritual sickness is lying. The deception that is there. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He points us in Surah Ahzab, chapter 33 of the Quran, verse 60, about those individuals, about the hypocrites who would spread gossip. So lying and gossiping, they would spread gossip. And their gossip was about what? About whenever the Prophet went into battle, that some would say that, the Prophet has been captured. The Prophet, he is dead. And that was to weaken the spirit of the believers. That, if the Prophet is dead, then hey, what are we fighting for? What are we moving forward for? That it's all over at this point. That sickness that they have in their hearts also leads to that third quality that we see in the Quran of the munafiq, of preparing the grounds for the enemy. Because when the munafiqeen, when they operate with that sickness in their hearts, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He states that fi qulubihim maradun, and their perspective in their so-called acceptance of deen. It says, مَا وَعَدَنَ اللَّهُ وَرَسُولُهُ إِلَّا غَرُورًا. They think that, well, look, all of this is deception anyway. They don't believe in it. And so why should others, again, live their life based on that? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He continues, and this is also in Surah Ahzab, verse 13, where He speaks about the munafiq. He says, وَإِذْ قَالَتْ طَائِفَةٌ مِّنْهُمْ يَا أَهْلَ يَثْرِبْ لَا مُقَامَ لَكُمْ فَارْجِعُوا وَيَسْتَأْذِنُوا فَرِيقٌ منهم النبي يقولون إن بيوتنا عورة وما هي بعورة يريدون إلا فرارا. So when a group of them, a group of the munafiq, when they would tell the people of Yathrib, of, again, Medina and that area, when they would tell them that this is not a place for you, so go back. So a group of them sought the Prophet's permission to leave. Again, they wanted to flee from battle. They wanted to, again, prepare the grounds. And this is, again, in the battle of Ahzab. What were they doing? And this is, when we read the history about Ahzab, there were a few people in Medina, again, the mushrikeen in Mecca. They were preparing to attack. They wanted to attack the Muslims. They were seeking the helps of the Christians and Jews in Medina. This was the Ahzab. These were the groups. This was that group. They were mounting a group. And then among the Muslims, there were some who were munafiqeen. They were actually on the side of the mushrikeen and the Christians and Jews. And so what were they doing? They were making these gossips. They were instilling in the minds of the Muslims as, oh, you know what? You know, there's a huge group who are coming. There's no way we're going to be able to defeat them. So weaken the spirit and the minds of people, preparing the grounds for, again, their defeat. So, you know, if the people don't have heart to stand, then they're going to flee. They're going to leave the Prophet alone. They're going to leave, you know, the Muslims alone, or at least those who say that they will stand, and there will be a small group. The exact same thing happened when we look at the history of Karbala, Imam Hussein. That why is it that so many people, that thousands of letters came from Kufa? But when it came for people to actually make a stance, only a few of those individuals who actually wrote letters to Imam Hussein, they remained. And this is because the same type of action was going on. And so, you know what, you know, Yazid, he sent Ibn Ziyad to come in, and Ibn Ziyad, he said, oh, this guy he's a tough guy. And he's mounting your army. He said, are you really going to go out and stand with Hussein? They're amassing a huge army. So those individuals who, again, they may have been believers, but planting that seed of doubt in their minds as to what is it that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants me to do? Does He want me to stand with Imam Hussein, or does He want me to flee from Imam Hussein? That was the job of the munafiq, to plant that seed of doubt. So that when the time came, again, Imam Hussein will be left alone. There was, you know, I searched for this one hadith today, or this, but I didn't find it. Inshallah, maybe I'll search for it again. But, you know, just to mention it or paraphrase it, or this idea of what the hadith had stated. Again, subhanAllah, it would, you know, very telling about this idea and this concept of how, unfortunately, some people, they get or affected by the munafiq. And that's why we have to really understand that what are these qualities, so that we can protect ourselves from it. And inshallah, tomorrow I'll give one of the hadith of Imam Zain al-Abidin, alayhi salatu wasalam, wherein he kind of gives us some preparation for how to navigate in a society where, or among people, maybe this person is not sincere. So how do you protect your deen and your iman, the iman of your family as well? How to navigate this interaction, because it is a very difficult interaction to navigate. With the kuffar, it's easy. Oh, hey, that person is doing this. This person is drinking. Oh, I'm as a Muslim, I don't drink. Or this person is doing that. Oh, as a Muslim, this is completely against my value system. But the munafiq, he appears to have your same value system, apparently. But in reality, he doesn't. And the whole time he's planting these seeds of doubt and deception. So that hadith, which again I didn't find, is, I believe it's during the time of Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi salatu wasalam, or either Imam Baqarah. Like I said, I don't remember, but I read this a while back, where someone comes to the Imam, one of these Imams, and he says that, Ya bin Rasulullah, he says, I recall and I heard that your grandfather, Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu wasalam, he said that there will be an Imam who will come and he will establish justice on this earth. And he would root out injustice on this earth. And what I recall from the hadith, and this is why I was trying to find it, because I believe the word also used was Mahdi, that a Mahdi will come, a guide will come. And this person will establish justice. And the Imam was, in that hadith, he says that the Imam, he put a time period on it. He says, oh, yeah, within like 30 years, this Mahdi, this guy will come, or this individual from my offspring will come, and he will establish justice. So this person's asking the Imam, he says that, you know what, that time period has passed. And where's that person who came to establish this justice? Did Imam Ali not know what he was saying, or what? So the Imam replied to him. He says, yes, that Imam was there to establish justice. He says, first of all, he says, all of us are Mahdi, that all of us are the guide from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He says, and that Imam came to establish justice. He says, but what happened? The people forsaked him. And those who said that they will stand with him, they stood against him. He said, and this is Hussein ibn Ali. In other words, had that deception, had that nifaq not been prevalent in the community among the Muslims, then Imam Hussein alayhi salatu wasalam, of course we know what the prophecy was, again, from the time of Rasulullah. This is not denying that from the time of Rasulullah, that Imam Hussein will be martyred. Why? Even Jibreel, he came and he gave this news to Rasulullah. The Ahl Bayt knew this. Why? Because they knew at that time that the hypocrisy would be so great that what? No one would stand with Imam Hussein. But had they had the heart and not been affected by the hypocrites and the hypocrisy, and had they been true to their statement, then they would have, Imam Hussein would have established justice. He would have established justice. Subhanallah. So the munafiq, one of their things and why they are effective in a negative way in a society is because, again, they spread that doubt, gossip. They prepare the grounds for the enemy. And therefore, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala states in Surah Baqarah, verses 11 and 12, says that these are the individuals. This is why إِذَا قِيلَ لَهُمْ لَا تُفْسِدُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ قَالُوا إِنَّمَا نَحْنُ مُصْلِحُونَ أَلَا إِنَّهُمْ هُمُ الْمُفْسِدُونَ وَلَكِنْ لَا يَشْعُرُونَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that these individuals are corrupt. They spread corruption in society. And when you tell them that, hey, don't spread corruption in society, they said, no, we want the best for society. Yeah, it's based on what moral principle? One that is relative, that fluctuates just by your opinion, or one that is subjective, that just based on a person's feeling. And this is what they were saying. If you look at what the army of Yazid was saying, no, we want to spread justice. When the caravan was being taken into Damascus, they were saying, oh, hey, we killed those who were uprising against the Amir. But they were spreading corruption. It was not justice. And a part of that corruption, as we also alluded to last night, and it is mentioned in Surah Munafiqun, that they, part of that corruption is that they try to strangle, they put an economic chokehold on the community and the believers. Salawat. I'll give you another example, because unfortunately throughout history, and I'll say this, Muslim history, not Islamic history. Islamic history is the history when we study the history of Rasulullah, we study the history of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim afdal. That's Islamic history. When we study their actions, when we study how they interact with the society, that's Islamic history. Other than that, we have, Muslim history, those who say that La ilaha illallah, Muhammad Rasulullah, but sometimes their actions are based on the Quran, sometimes it's not. That's Muslim history. When we look at Muslim history, one of the emirs, Panah Khusru, or better known as Adad al-Dawla. Adad al-Dawla, he was one of the Buyat leaders, one who kind of ruled on behalf of the Abbasids. And again, we know what the Abbasids did. The Abbasids killed more of the Ahlul Bayt than even the Umayyads. But their initial uprising was what? That, we're rising up to place the rightful authority back into power, and that is the household of Fatima. But when they seized power, they didn't do any of this. So there were other groups who ruled on behalf of the Abbasids. One of them is the Buyid dynasty, and among them was this Adad al-Dawla, the pillar of the dynasty, the pillar of the Umayyad dynasty. He ruled from about 949 to 983, and he was one of those rulers that was considered to be perhaps one of the greatest rulers in the Middle East. He ruled over a vast part of land. And what he ruled over was what we consider as present-day Pakistan, Iran, northern Iraq, and Yemen. All of that was under his authority. When he ruled, there was a group of Kurds. And at that time, one who was considered Kurd is a nomad. There was a group who they decided they didn't want to be a part of, or a subject of this Panah Khusru. No, just, if these guys want to do what they want to do, let them do what they want to do, and we'll be on our own. So they began to go up into the mountains, kind of out of the reach of Panah Khusru. So when one of his advisors told him about this, so he said, okay, well, he plotted this scheme. And again, we see that where does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, how does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide the society? How does the Ahlul Bayt alayhim afdal interact with society? And how do these individuals do so? So when he heard about this, he says, you know what? They want to leave out of the control of my authority. So, and this is what Panah Khusru was doing. He was constantly expanding the boundaries of his authority. And this is why he was one of the greatest leaders, because he ruled a vast land. So he said that, okay, he sent this Tajir, this businessman. He says, you know what? You go among them. You take this, this donkey, and it has some big, couple of donkeys. It has some big bags on it, treasures. One part is treasure, a lot of gold and silver, and the other is full of sweets. And you tell them that, look, this is from a gift from one of the queens of the empire, the Emir. Just a gift. Just to maybe convince you that, okay, if you want to go out, but we're not going to harm you. See, this is an offering, supposedly a peace offering. But when he sent that so-called gift, the gold, it was gold and silver, and these sweets, the halawiyat, these sweets were all poisoned. Poison. So this businessman, he said, okay. He went among them. He started living among them, walking. He's like, okay. Now he brings these things. Again, they trusted him. He was with them for a bit, and they said, oh, hey, this guy's a pretty good businessman. And now he's coming with this gift from the leaders, from the rulers, from the queen, actually. And so some of them accept the gold, and one guy, he goes off with the donkey with all the sweets. And so when he gets up into the mountains, he opens up, he sees, oh, you know what? I can't eat all of this myself, and it'll probably be bad if I eat all this stuff. So he invites everybody in the village to come and to eat. This is the sweets from the queen. And what happened? It kills everyone. Allahu Akbar. And after it kills everyone, this businessman, he goes and he does what? He goes and he collects all the gold back. In addition to everything else those guys had. He collects it all and, subhanAllah. This is nifaq. To hear the businessman is walking among them, he gains their trust. And then he engages with the authority to the point where he kills all of them. And this is how, again, they say panah khusru, he gains control of that area. And there was one individual, according to one individual who happened not to be there, but then panah khusru, he captures this guy and does what? He says, okay, well, if you want to continue to survive and live, then all those individuals who are the Kurds or in the tribe, he says, you will rule over them, but on my behalf. Otherwise, I'll just get rid of you too. This guy had no choice. He says, okay, well, I'll have to rule. If I want to keep my life, then I'll rule on your behalf over these other nomads. And this is why these individuals, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he describes them, he says that the munafiqeen is what? They are the party of shaitan. They are the party of shaitan. إِذَا خَلَوْا إِلَى شَيَاطِينِهِمْ, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Baqarah. And therefore, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he warns us about them. He says, فَحَذَرْهُمْ قَاتَلَهُمُ اللَّهُ أَنَّا يُؤْفَكُونَ in Surah Al-Munafiqun, verse 4. He says, beware of them. Beware of nifaq. And how do we take heed and beware of nifaq? Inshallah, tomorrow we'll give that hadith of Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salatu wasalam, where again he gives us some guidelines about that. To be aware of them so that we're not pulled into their trap or destroyed. And may God, as we may pray against them as well, that قَاتَلَهُمُ اللَّهُ أَنَّا يُؤْفِكُونَ, that such individuals, such diseases within the society, that may Allah remove them so that the society will not be misguided and that others may not be like them, that they are in the asfala min an-nar, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala states. Because if we're not careful, as those who were in Kufa, many of them were not careful, that what happened to them? That they were deceived. That though they wrote their letters to Hussein alayhi salatu wasalam, the seed of doubt and their iman and their duty and their responsibility to the master of their time was planted. So when Ibn Ziyad, he paid them to collect their weapons, to give up their weapons, they did. And when he paid them again to take up their weapons and their arms against Imam Hussein, they did. Only a few individuals, they refused to submit their weapons when Ibn Ziyad said, submit your weapons. And so they kept their weapons. And when Imam Hussein ﷺ had reached to Karbala, while they were still in Kufa, to get out of Kufa, they had to fight their way out of Kufa. One of those individuals is Imam Hussein ka bachpan dosti. One of the friends of Imam Hussein at a very young age. And he was older than Imam Hussein, but he was Imam Hussein's friend. And that was Habib ibn Madahir. Habib ibn Madahir, who, again, that friendship remained. That loyalty remained. In fact, in one of the beautiful poems about Habib, to show that where Habib stood with regards to the Ahlul Bayt, with regards to Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Dusti ko dawam bakhsha hai, ishq ko ek nizam bakhsha hai, jaan de kar Habib ne shah par, khud ko a'la maqam bakhsha hai. SubhanAllah. This is beautifully describes Habib, that the friend of Imam Hussein, that friendship makes a lasting bond, and his bond with Imam Hussein was lasting. Love creates a system, a nizam. What was that love for Imam Hussein? That system of loyalty, that system of iman. Habib embraces fate for his master. He gives his life for Hussein. Thus he elevates to a higher state. And in that sacrifice that he makes for Imam Hussein, he elevates his maqam. Habib ibn Mazahir had said that when he came into Karbala, just to see the attachment of Habib to the Ahlul Bayt. They said Zainab salamullah alayha, she saw Habib coming from a distance, and she knew that this was Habib, the companion of Imam Ali, her father, the friend of her brother, Imam Hussein. So she sent someone to give salams to Habib. They said that Habib, he came to the camp of Imam Hussein crying. He says that Zainab bint Amir al-Mu'mineen, you give salams to me, someone like me? That wasn't that I deserved the salam from Zainab. Habib, that on the eve of Ashura, on Tasua, he said that he would give his life even if he had to give it 1,000 times. Habib, who is also described in one of the poems, he says, ما صار في الأنصار مثل حبيب معلوم جسمه مجدر في الثرى مخضب بالدموم ويوصي على مسلم يجاهد عن المظلوم يقله يا مسلم الله الله في حال غريب حبيب أنت إلى الحسين حبيب إن لم ينط نصب فأنت له نصيب. This is Habib ibn Madahir, as it says that there was no companion like Habib ibn Madahir. According to some of the narrations, he was the most elderly of the companions of Imam Hussein. There was no companion like Habib ibn Madahir, that when he was murdered, that his body was drenched in blood and covered with dust. But even in that moment, He was giving advice. He was keeping the hearts of the believers strong. That what happened to Habib, that when he went out onto the battlefield to battle the enemies of Allah, they said Habib ibn Madahir, that for an elderly man, he fought like someone who was young, that he killed many enemies, until a person by the name of Tamim, he struck Habib in the back with a lance, and as Habib, he began to fall forward, another person by the name of Hasin, he came and he struck the head of Habib, and as Habib, he was falling towards the ground, that Tamim came again and struck Habib in the head. Habib was giving his final farewells to his Mawla at the time. As-salamu alayka ya Aba Abdillah. That when Imam Hussein, he heard the sound of Habib, he said that Imam Hussein, he came out onto the battlefield. But according to some of the narrations of the Maqtal, they said Imam Hussein, he looked at Muslim ibn Awsaja, and that is if Muslim ibn Awsaja, according to one narration, he died after Habib. He looked at it, Muslim ibn Awsaja, because there was a aqd al-akhuwa, there was a brotherhood, a pact of brotherhood between Habib and Muslim ibn Awsaja. That he looked at Muslim ibn Awsaja and says, go out, that your brother has been martyred, your brother has been struck down. They said that Muslim ibn Awsaja, he went out towards Habib, and he bent down over Habib, and he told Habib, he says that if I didn't know that my fate would be like yours, I will ask you for what your wasiyah was. But Habib, they said he was saying something very softly. So Muslim, he came forward. Ya Qiluhu, ya Muslim, Allah, Allah, fi hal gharib. He was telling Muslim that what is my wasiyah? He says, look after this gharib, look after Imam Hussein, look after Imam Hussein. Make sure that he doesn't die before you, O Muslim. That this is Habib ibn Madahir, Habib of Karbala. Though Habib, he did not have a blood relationship with Hussein, but he was a beloved of Hussein. He was the one who was honored to stand with Hussein. This is the Habib of Karbala, the one that Imam Hussein, they said that after Habib, he was martyred. They said even when Imam Hussein, he returned back to the camp, they said they noticed that Imam Hussein, he kept reciting, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. He said he kept repeating this. This, why is this? Because Habib ibn Madahir, he was the only Habib of Karbala. As one poet, he describes that moment in poetic form. Ya Habibi, tu Habib Karbala'i. Ya Habibi, tu Habib Karbala'i. Ham safar bama binu kenayz haid. Ahlan wa marhaban, ya Habib Karbala, ya ban al-madahiri. That, oh Habib, you are the Habib of Karbala. Oh Habib of Karbala, that you have traveled with us so far. That how did Habib travel with Imam Hussein? That, as the poem says, that Habib, not only as a child, he was traveling with Imam Hussein. Not only was he a companion with Imam Hussein, but his head was also companioned with Imam Hussein on the spears that were being taken to Kufa and Sham. He was the traveler of Imam Hussein. This is Habib Karbala, Habib, the son of Al-Madahiri. That Habib was just one of the companions of Imam Hussein. And like the other companions, they all sacrificed their souls for Imam Hussein. Aslam al-Turki Mawla al-Hussein ibn Ali, Anas ibn Harith al-Kahili, Anis ibn Maqil al-Asbahi, Burayr ibn Khadayr al-Hamdani, Bishr ibn Amr al-Hadrami, Jabir ibn al-Harith al-Salmani, Jiblat ibn Ali al-Shaybani, Junadat ibn Ka'b al-Ansari, Amr ibn Junadat al-Ansari, and many, many more other companions of Imam Hussein. اللهم بحق هذا المجلس الحسيني اغفر ذنوبنا واستر عيوبنا وقضي حوائجنا واشفي مرضانا وارحم امواتنا وعجل فرج مولانا صاحب العصر والزمان واجعلنا من اعوانه وانصاره والمستشيرين بين يديه وتحت لواء بحق محمد واله الطاهرين. ماتم الحسين.
صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. So I'm gonna read some poetry. It's for Abdul Kadhim Abdul Hussein al-Hawlawi from Iraq, and I just want to repeat after me. هيهم يا مسلم، هيهم يا مسلم يا المحير العاندك، يلا هيهم يا مسلم يا المحير العاندك، تاخذ وياك الأكبر لو تروح لوحدك. هيهم يا مسلم يا المحير العاندك، تاخذ وياك الأكبر لو تروح لوحدك. بعيني ألطم حبيبي ألطم. Just faster. بعيني سيفك شايفه شقد لذيذة سوالفه، بعيني سيفك شايفه شقد لذيذة سوالفه. أنا عندك طايفة، أنا عندك طايفة، لو عديت لو عديت بعينك سيفك شايفه قد لذيذة سوالفه، بعينك سيفك شايفه قد لذيذة سوالفه. أنا عندك طايفة لو عديت لو عديت، زحمة عندك فارس يا الفارس عين الشمس، زحمة عندك فارس يا الفارس عين الشمس، ترمم تشوفك وتطوفك عين الشمس، ترمم تشوفك وتطوفك عين الشمس. ما تطق القاتل جيشاي عزة نفس، ما تطق القاتل جيشاي عزة نفس. سيف حسين المحير العام، سيف حسين المحير العام، يا ابو طاهر يا ابو طاهر يا مسلم حيهم يا المحير العاندك، يا محيهم عاند يا ابو طاهر يا ابو طاهر. هم ذول ايش بيهم وحده روحي عليهم، هم ذول ايش بيهم وحده روحي عليهم، هم زيادة عليهم خويا حسين، هم زيادة عليهم خويا حسين. من روح اثنين شفينا اللم الفله، من روح اثنين من شفينا اللم الفله، ساعة وحدة نحوشها وبجيوشها نلم الفلا، ساعة وحدة نحوشها وبجيوشها نلم الفلا. من وقت مولانا تلقانا بطف كربلة، من وقت مولانا تلقانا بطف كربلة، لكن الكوفة حستي يا المحير العاندك، يا ابو طاهر يا ابو طاهر يا ابو طاهر يا ابو طاهر. ابنك قدر جفوفه بالزعل معروفه، ابنك قدر جفوفه بالزعل المعروفة 7 مثل الكوفة ما تكفي 7 مثل الكوفة ما تكفي خاف غادم ندخل خاف غادم ندخل ما يحصل منهم نفر ما خاف غادم ندخل ما يحصل منهم نفر تعرف متحزم ما يسلم منهم نفر تعرف من نتحزم ما يسلم منهم نفر بالطبخ خلي يفيدك لعضيدك خلي ظهر بالطبخ ذا يفيدك لعضيدك خلي ظهر غاد ياخذ اكثر يا المحير العاندك غاد ياخذ اكثر يا المحير العاندك يا ابو طاهر يا ابو طاهر يا ابو طاهر يا ابو طاهر الكوفة مسلم مالتك الكوفة مسلم مالتك قصدك وبراحتك الكوفة مسلم مالتك قصدك وبراحتك قوم شير مرايتك قوم شير مرايتك يا المهيوب يا المهيوب يا المهيوب ياهو غيرك باسل يستاهل هذا الدرب ياهو غيرك باسل يستاهل هذا الدرب صح خضر ويكلف هسه اعرفك صح خضر ويكلف بس اعرفك شفك صعب بس اعرفك شفك صعب على السهل ما يدور يا محير العاندك على السهل ما يدور يا محير العاندك يا ابو طاهر يا ابو طاهر يا ابو طاهر يا ابو طاهر يلا اخذ ثارك يلا اخذ ثارك خلي يطوع صارك يلا خذ بثارك خلي يطوع صارك كون اريد بنارك كون اريد بنارك كون اريد بنارك تشوي الغير انت زود شراعي وذراعي وساع البخت انت زود شراعي وذراعي وساع البخت بكردن يا ساعي يا ساع البخت بكردن يا ساعي يا راعي وساع البخت انت مو مسلم ابن عمك يا ابو طاهر 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 لكم الدعاء
حسینم خدا نگهدار تو حسینم خدا نگهدار تو حسینم خدا نگهدار تو حسینم خدا نگهدار تو این من و این خاک سیه بر سرم این من و این خاک سیه بر سرم این تو و این نعش علی اکبرت این تو و این نعش علی اکبرت این من و این دو نوه گل پرپرم این تو و این قاسم گل پیکرت حسینم خدا نگهدار تو حسینم خدا نگهدار تو حسینم حسینم خدا نگهدار تو این تو و این طفل اچان رباب این من و این کوفه و شام خراب این تو و این قتلگاه و قحط آب این من و آن مجلس بزم شراب این تو و این قاسم عبداللهد این من و این مادر از غرباب حسینم خدا نگهدار تو حسینم خدا نگهدار نگهدار تو خدا نگهدار تو این من و این خاک سیاه بر سرم این من و این خاک سیاه بر سرم این تو و این نش علی اکبرت این تو و این نش علی اکبرت این تو و این طفل اچان رباب این من و این کوفه و شام خراب حسینم خدا نگهدار تو حسینم خدا نگهدار تو حسینم حسینم خدا نگهدار تو این من و این دونه و گل پرم این تو و این قاسم گل پیکرت این من و این دونه و گل پرم این دو و این قاسم گل پیبرم این من و این خاک سیاه بر سرم این تو و این نش علی اکبرت حسینم خدا نگهدار تو حسینم خدا نگهدار تو حسینم حسینم
على محمد وآله हुसैन तेरे लहू की खुशबू हुसैन तेरे लहू की खुशबू फलक के दामन से आ रही है हुसैन तेरे लहू की खुशबू हुसैन तेरे लहू की खुशबू फलक के दामन से आ रही है हुसैन तेरे लहू की खुशबू हुसैन तेरे फलक के दामन से आ रही है ये खून नाहक छुपेगा कब तक ये खून नाहक छुपेगा कब तक जिसे ये दुनिया छुपा रही है हुसैन तेरे लहू की खुशबू पलक के दामन से आ रही है हुसैन तेरे लहू की खुशबू पलक के दामन से आ रही है हुसैन मकतल में लेके असगर कबर बनाने को चल पड़े हैं रुबाब लोगों तड़प तड़प कर अज़ाए असगर मना रही है हुसैन तेरे लहू की खुशबू हुसैन तेरे लहू की खुशबू फलक के दामन हुस्न के दामन से आ रहे तमाम आलम को ये दिखाया कटा के गर्दन को दी बचाया मगर ये उम्मत अभी अभी आले मगर ये उम्मत अभी भी आले नबी को लोगों सता रही है हुसैन तेरे लहू की खुशबू पलक के दामन से आ रही है हुसैन मकतल में जा रहे हैं जवान बेटे की लाश उठाने मगर ज़ईफ़ी कदम कदम पे उठा रही है बिठा रही है। हुसैन तेरे लहू की खुशबू फलक के दामन से आ रही है। जनाबे आदम जनाबे ईसा जनाबे मरियम जनाबे जहरा हुसैन इब्ने अली के गम में फलक के दामन से आ रही है। अजल भी आंसू बहा रही है। हुसैन तेरे लहू की खुशबू हुसैन तेरे लहू की खुशबू फलक के दामन से आ रही है। हुसैन तेरे लहू की खुशबू फलक के दामन से आ रही है। या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन। सलावत।